I have heard some criticisms of the anonymity set.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any response to that? Is there anything going on in Monero where that's trying to be increased?
Yeah. First thing I would say is anybody that's interested in this, check out MoneroTopia.com because we're going to be going into this stuff in great detail, right? So I think that's one of the another great feature of Monero is its community and the open source nature of the project, right? I don't think anybody's out here saying it's perfect and that we've solved things, but people are constantly questioning things and trying to fix them, right? So the issue you're talking about, the anonymity set, so that's one aspect of Monero. Monero uses 3 basic technologies to obfuscate the ledger, right? So the first one is confidential transactions, and that essentially obfuscates the amounts. And that's pure encryption. There's no concern about that aspect of Monero. That was actually invented by Bitcoiners. If you believe in the concept of encryption, then you should believe that, that essentially that can't be cracked unless there's, quantum computers or something that could overcome it. And then it doesn't get updated with some new version to be quantum resistant. But that's very tested and hard. And there's no concern there, right? That the amounts will be cracked. So there's people, the ledger is perfectly obfuscated in that respect in terms of seeing the amounts. Another technology is called stealth addresses, and that obfuscates the receiver's address. So when I send you Monero, you show me an address that I scan, right? I'm basically now, as the sender, taking that information, creating a new address, right? That then you can open, right? And so what that effectively does is that creates a stealth address where there's no address to go look up on the blockchain. There's nothing to even find there. And that technology, stealth addresses, also is very, it's true encryption, right? There's no concerns there. Both those things were actually no. So now let's get to the third. So the third is where people have the issue, and that's called ring signatures. And that obfuscates the sender. So like Bitcoin, there has to be a signer for a transaction, right? In Bitcoin, it's very clear you know who the signer is. In Monero, the signer is obfuscated through deception, right? So you're tricking those who are trying to surveil by showing multiple signers, and you don't know who the true signer is. But it's not done in some encrypted way where there's a perfectly large anonymity set, which is the size of the entire network, but rather it's one of 16 decoys, which sounds low. It's effectively larger because, without getting to the technicalities, it's through the history of each signature. But the point is, it's not an infinitely large anonymity set. And that there's things that can be done if somebody is trying to pinpoint and track and trace a particular person's transactions. To surveil the network, it really does do arguably a very good job at preventing that, right? Some kind of mass surveillance. Number one, the amounts are truly encrypted. The receiver is truly encrypted, but this one element, right? And so if there's some kind of like pinpointed attack where somebody wants to learn about you, there are things that can be done to kind of whittle away at the options of who the potential sender can be, and guesses can be made through probability, not even deterministically, right? I'm just giving you the worst possible case. So it can't be deterministically cracked, but there's things, information that's out there that can help somebody try to figure out who the actual real signer is. So that is Monero's weakness, and it's constantly improving. So the decoys are always going up as technology improves. The only reason why we don't have 1,000 decoys is because it would make transactions essentially very heavy, right? So as there's
you want it to be used like cash.
Right. Well, yeah, it would cost too much to send a transaction. It would take too much time. It would require too much bandwidth, and it would require too much, hardware to essentially. So we have to scale that up slowly. And so that gets scaled up as we make breakthroughs in other components of Monero, allowing us to increase that anonymity set, essentially, right, with the amount of decoys. And then there's other larger concepts that will likely be put in place where we'll completely eradicate the concept of a ring signature and replace it with something more grand, which is like, true encryption, which is like being done in Zcash, right? They've implemented something that, avoids the ring signature issue. And it's very likely that we'll see Monero move in that direction of full proofs and implement that. But see, the thing with Monero is it's kind of interesting that the approaches of the projects, right? So Zcash is like sitting back, was trying to create a perfect technology to then release, whereas Monero was trying to create digital cash today, right? And then scale up with the network as the network's being used and to improve it over time. And do it in a open way, right? Where it's an truly open source project. The community's involved. There's no corporation involved, right? Zcash has the Zcash Foundation. They've done some amazing things. They've created some amazing technology, but the ecosystem isn't as genuinely open source as Monero's is. And, those that really study this stuff closely realize that that's a big part of the value here, right? One of the reasons that Bitcoin is so impressive is the way it started, right? It started by Satoshi Nakamoto,
the Immaculate Conception.
Immaculate Conception, right? With a bunch of other nerds where it didn't have any value at the time. It was literally the value was them just nerding out and like obsessing about the technology where they're willing to make these sacrifices to build upon it. And it gained value from that, right? Out of Immaculate Conception, right? And so Monero has that Immaculate Conception story as well. It was invented in 2014, also by an anonymous group or a person, right? It was Nicholas Van Saberhagen. So NS instead of SN, instead of Satoshi Nakamoto, it was Nicholas Van Saberhagen. Some theorize that maybe some of the same people involved, in the Bitcoin white paper were involved in the crypto note white paper. So it's called crypto note. It's a completely different protocol. It wasn't a fork of Bitcoin. And when it was invented, they called out this shortcoming of Bitcoin. And they said, we're going to recreate it and we're going to change some things, and primarily, using technologies like ring signatures and stealth addresses, and confidential transactions, which was actually invented by Bitcoiners. In fact, Satoshi Nakamoto in a post essentially described Monero. He described the technology of ring signatures, right? And he described stealth addresses, which is what CryptoNote ended up being, which was launched soon thereafter that post. And so, Satoshi was fine with it, right? He was fine with ring signatures because that was the best tech at the time and trusted too, right? So that's one of the, the things that needs to be considered, right? Because you're working with a technology that needs to be trusted, right? And secure. You can't move fast and break things, right? Bitcoin has done it to the degree where they basically ossified, right? But they're very careful in how they move because people are treating it like digital gold, digital cash. You can't one day that there's some bug there and you could easily grab somebody's Bitcoin or double spend, right? So you have to be very careful with how you implement new technologies. And so adding privacy to a crypto is something where you can make big mistakes, right? And so you could add the newfangled thing that sounds amazing with an infinite an anonymity set, but you're taking the risk of has it been truly vetted and is it understood to the degree where we know there could be no backdoor that was put in place when it was implemented, or that there is no way to crack the encryption. So Monero used at the time trusted technology to implement its digital cash-like features. And then the idea being it adds the new updated technology as those technologies become vetted and trusted, which is a smart way of doing it, right? While keeping in balance the immaculate conception nature of the network and the true open source nature of it.
Unchecked governments have eradicated privacy and truth. Those who resist are brought down swiftly, but we refuse to submit. Unipunks are freedom fighters, protected by encrypted shadows. The future we're building is sovereign and uncensorable. The moonlit night is coming.